The sickness didn't hit me all at once. It crept in like a fog, stealing my strength by degrees, until I was nothing more than a ghost haunting the guest bedroom of a house I paid for. I am Elias Vance. I am 79 years old, and for the last 3 months I have been a prisoner in my own body. My daughter-in-law, Carla, calls it the long flu. My son, Robert, calls it old age taking its toll, a phrase he uses while checking his watch, as if my decline is an inconvenience to his schedule. I call it a slow, agonizing descent into hell. My stomach burns constantly, a fire that water cannot quench, a gnawing, acidic heat that wakes me in the middle of the night and leaves me gasping for air. My hands, once steady enough to repair watches and rebuild engines, now shake so badly I can barely hold a spoon. And through it all, Carla is there. She plays the angel of mercy perfectly. She smooths my brow with a cool cloth that smells of lavender. She fluffs my pillows. She brings me trays of food when I am too weak to walk to the dining room. "You need to eat, Dad," she says, her voice dripping with a sweetness that used to comfort me, but now makes my skin crawl. She sat on the edge of my bed this morning, blowing on a spoonful of broth. It was a thick, creamy soup, smelling of garlic and herbs. "It's my grandmother's recipe," she whispered, holding the spoon to my lips. "It will build your strength. You need to keep your strength up, Elias. Robert is so worried about you." I believed her. I swallowed the soup, ignoring the faint metallic tang that lingered at the back of my throat. I told myself it was just the iron in the spinach, or perhaps the medication Dr. Evans prescribed for my blood pressure. I loved her. I loved them both. I bought this house for them 5 years ago when Robert lost his job at the firm. I paid off their credit cards when they got in over their heads with the renovation. I thought I was investing in family. I thought I was securing a place where I could age with dignity, surrounded by the people I raised. I didn't know I was financing my own execution. The discovery happened on a Tuesday. It was grocery day. Usually, Robert brings the bags in from the porch. It is his one household chore, the one contribution he makes to the domestic routine, while Carla manages everything else. But Robert was on a call. I could hear him in his office down the hall, his voice raised, sounding desperate. He was always desperate these days. He was always chasing a deal that was just out of reach, always needing a little more bridge capital, always asking if I could dip into my bonds just one more time. The delivery driver rang the doorbell and left the bags on the porch. I heard the engine fade away. Carla was upstairs in the shower. I could hear the water running through the pipes in the wall, and I could hear her humming a tune. It was a happy tune. It sounded like "Happy days are here again." I was thirsty. It was a desperate, clawing thirst that is a hallmark of this flu. My throat felt like it was lined with sandpaper. I wanted a ginger ale. We kept them in the pantry, tucked behind the cereal boxes. I sat up. The room spun. I waited for the vertigo to pass, gripping the mattress until my knuckles turned white. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed. My feet were swollen, the skin tight and shiny. I reached for my cane, the heavy walnut stick I had used since my hip surgery. I stood up, my knees buckled, but I caught myself. I shuffled to the door. Every step was a negotiation with gravity. I walked down the hallway, the cane thumping softly on the hardwood. Thump, drag, thump, drag. I made it to the kitchen. It was bright and clean, the granite countertops gleaming. Through the front window, I saw the grocery bags sitting on the porch mat. It looked like it was going to rain. I couldn't let the bread get wet. It was a small, stupid thought, the kind of domestic worry that occupies your mind when you don't realize you are dying. I unlocked the front door and pushed the screen open. The air was heavy and humid. I grabbed the bags, 2 in each hand, my fingers trembling with the effort. I dragged them into the kitchen and kicked the door shut. I was exhausted. I leaned against the counter, my chest heaving. I needed that ginger ale. I opened the first paper sack. Vegetables, a loaf of sourdough bread, a gallon of milk, normal things, the trappings of a life I was rapidly losing.
I reached into the second bag. It was heavier. It clanked. It contained cleaning supplies, bleach, ammonia, souring pads, and at the bottom, wedged between a bottle of window cleaner and a bag of onions, was a small, heavy box from the hardware store. It must have been tossed in with the groceries by mistake, or perhaps the delivery service had made a stop at the hardware store as part of a bundled order. I pulled it out. The box was bright yellow with red lettering. Rat be gone, high potency, anticoagulant.
I frowned. I turned the box over in my hands. We didn't have rats. We had a pest control contract I paid for annually. The exterminator came every 3 months like clockwork. I had seen him just last week, spraying the perimeter. Why would Carla buy rat poison? Then I saw the receipt. It was crumpled into a tight ball and shoved between the bleach and the poison box. Robert usually threw the receipts away immediately, hiding the evidence of their spending. But this one had survived. I smoothed it out on the counter. My trembling fingers made the paper crinkle loudly in the quiet kitchen. I had to lean close to read the fading thermal ink without my reading glasses. It listed the groceries first. Chicken thighs, carrots, celery, heavy cream, garlic. And at the bottom, from a separate transaction stapled to the back, dated the same morning, from the hardware store next to the market. Strychnine-based rodenticide. Quantity, 1. I stared at the paper. The world didn't just spin. It tilted on its axis. The burning in my stomach suddenly made terrible, terrifying sense. The metallic taste in the broth, the dizziness that always came 30 minutes after dinner, the way Carla watched me eat, her eyes fixated on every swallow, her breath held until the bowl was empty. She wasn't checking my appetite. She was checking the dosage. I stood there in the kitchen, clutching a piece of thermal paper that cost $3.99, realizing that my life was worth less to my family than the price of a gallon of milk. It is a specific, shattering kind of heartbreak to realize the hand that feeds you is also the hand digging your grave. If you have ever trusted someone with your life only to find a knife in your back, or if you know what it feels like to be a burden to the people you sacrificed everything for, take a moment to subscribe. Because I am about to show you that while poison works silently, the truth screams louder than any siren, and I intend to make them hear it. I heard the shower turn off upstairs. The pipes groaned into silence. The humming stopped. Panic, cold and sharp, flooded my veins, washing away the nausea. I couldn't let her know I knew. Not yet. I was too weak to fight them physically. Robert was young and strong, desperate for money. Carla was cunning and cold. If I confronted them now, here in the kitchen, I would have a heart attack before dinner. I would fall down the stairs. I would slip in the bathtub.
I shoved the receipt into the pocket of my robe. My hand brushed against the poison box. I had to put it back. I put the rat be gone back in the bag, wedging it exactly where I found it, between the onions and the window cleaner. I crumpled the top of the bag to look untouched. I grabbed a bottle of ginger ale from the pantry, my movements frantic and clumsy. I dropped the bottle cap on the floor and had to leave it there. I couldn't bend down to pick it up. I shuffled back to my room. Thump, drag, thump, drag. I moved as fast as my traitorous legs would carry me. I made it to my door just as I heard Carla's footsteps on the stairs. "Dad?" she called out. "Did you get the groceries?" "I'm in the bathroom," I yelled back, my voice cracking. I slammed my bedroom door and locked it. I leaned against the wood, gasping for air, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Thump, 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 thump. It felt like a bird trapped in a cage. I sat on the edge of the bed, forcing myself to breathe. In, out, in, out. I needed help. I couldn't call the police, not without proof. They would come to the house and see a confused, sick old man and a caring, well-dressed family. Robert would show them my medications. Carla would offer them coffee and tell them I had been hallucinating from the fever. They would leave, and that night, the dosage would double. I needed undeniable evidence. I needed a witness. I reached under my mattress. I pulled out my old flip phone, the one Robert thought was broken and thrown away years ago. I kept it charged for emergencies. This was beyond an emergency. I dialed Dr. Sam Halloway. Sam was a retired toxicologist and my oldest friend. We had served in the Navy together. He was the only man alive who knew I wasn't senile. He was the only man who wouldn't look at my trembling hands and see weakness. "Sam," I whispered when he answered. "Elias." Sam's voice was groggy. It was early afternoon, but Sam napped. "What's wrong? You sound breathless." "I'm being poisoned, Sam."
I said. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. Saying it out loud made it real. It solidified the betrayal into a physical object. Carla is putting rat poison in the soup. I found the receipt. I found the box. There was a silence on the line. I could hear Sam shifting, the rustle of papers, the click of a lamp turning on. "Are you sure, Elias?" Sam asked, his voice losing the sleepiness instantly. "Could it be for—" "We don't have rats, Sam." I cut him off. In my stomach.
It feels like I swallowed a handful of broken glass. The metallic taste, the dizziness. It matches, Sam. You know it matches. Sam's voice turned steel hard. "Save the next bowl. Do not eat a drop. I'll say I was in the neighborhood." "I can't wait until tomorrow, Sam," I whispered. "I don't think I'll survive the night if I eat dinner." "Then don't eat," Sam commanded. "Fake it, spill it, do whatever you have to do." "And Elias?" "Yes." "Check your safe," Sam said. "The wall safe." "Why?" "If they're killing you, it's because the money is already gone, or they need it now," Sam said. "Poison is a weapon of impatience, Elias. It's a weapon of greed. Check the assets." I hung up. I waited. I sat in the silence of my room, listening to the house. I heard Carla go downstairs. I heard the clatter of pots and pans. I heard the chop, chop, chop of a knife hitting a cutting board. She was starting to cook. I stood up. I walked to the closet. I pushed aside my hanging suits I hadn't worn in years, to reveal the small wall safe mounted at eye level. My hands shook so violently, I had to use 2 hands to steady the dial. Right to 14, left to 22, right to 9. The lock clicked. It was a heavy, mechanical sound. I pulled the door open. My heart stopped. The safe was empty. The stack of municipal bonds I had been saving for my care facility. God. The envelope of emergency cash, $5,000 in hundreds. God. The deed to the summer cabin. God. It was gutted. Robert had cleaned me out. He had taken everything while I lay in bed, too sick to check, too trusting to suspect. But there was one paper left. It was lying flat on the metal shelf, bright white and crisp. I pulled it out. It was a life insurance policy, a new one, taken out 6 months ago. I scanned the document. Insured, Elias Vance. Beneficiary, Robert Vance. I looked at the payout amount. It was substantial, $2 million. But there was a clause highlighted in yellow highlighter, Carla's highlighter. Double indemnity for accidental death. And then I saw the date. The policy had a maturation clause. It wasn't valid for the first 6 months to prevent suicide claims. The policy date was May 15th. Today was November 15th. The policy matured at midnight tonight. If I died before midnight, they got nothing. If I died tomorrow, or if I died tonight after the clock struck 12, they got $4 million. They weren't just poisoning me. They were timing me. "Dad!"
Carla's voice floated up from the kitchen, cheerful and bright. "Soup's on. I made it extra creamy tonight. I put in some heavy cream to help you keep it down." I looked at the empty safe. I looked at the receipt still crumpled in my pocket. I looked at the insurance policy in my hand. I wasn't just a sick old man to them. I was a lottery ticket that was about to become valid. I folded the policy and shoved it into my robe pocket next to the receipt. I grabbed my cane. "Coming, Carla?" I yelled back. I wasn't just sick. I was a deadline they were trying to meet, and I had 5 hours until midnight. The dining room was set for a celebration, but it felt like a wake for a man who was still breathing. Carla had brought out the good china, my late wife's Wedgwood pattern with the delicate blue vines that we only ever used for Christmas or milestone anniversaries. I hadn't seen those plates in 5 years, not since Martha passed. Seeing them now, laid out on the lace tablecloth, felt like a violation, a desecration of a memory that was too pure for the filth of this evening. 3 tall tapers flickered in the center of the table, casting long, dancing shadows against the beige walls, making the room feel smaller, more suffocating. The air conditioner was humming, but the room felt stiflingly hot, thick with the scent of roasted chicken,
and the underlying sharp odor of desperation. Robert sat at the head of the table. He was wearing his best suit, the one I bought him for his last job interview, but it hung loosely on his frame now. He looked haggard. He was pouring a glass of Pinot Noir, but his hand shook so violently that the wine sloshed against the sides of the crystal goblet, threatening to stain the white linen. He wouldn't look me in the eye. He kept adjusting his tie, pulling at the knot as if it were a noose, checking his watch every 30 seconds. He was sweating, beads of perspiration gathering on his upper lip despite the chill in the room. "Happy birthday, Dad," Robert mumbled, raising his glass halfway before setting it back down. I looked at him. I looked at the son I had taught to ride a bike, the son I had bailed out of debt 3 times, the son I loved more than my own life. "My birthday is in August, Robert," I said. My voice was quiet, steady. Robert flinched. He looked at Carla, panic widening his eyes. "We just wanted to celebrate you," Carla chirped, breezing into the room from the kitchen.
She was wearing a red dress, bright and festive, a stark contrast to the grim reality of the evening. She carried a steaming porcelain tureen in her hands, setting it down in the center of the table with a theatrical flourish. "To show you how much we appreciate everything you've done," she continued, offering me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her eyes were hard, flat, and predatory. They were the eyes of a shark smelling blood in the water. "Who needs a calendar to celebrate family? We thought a nice dinner, just the 3 of us." She lifted the lid of the tureen. Steam billowed up, curling in the candlelight. The smell hit me instantly. It was overpowering. Garlic, heavy cream, roasted carrots, and thyme. But underneath the culinary mask, there was that faint metallic undertone I had learned to identify over the last 3 months. It was the smell of sickness. It was the smell of the flu that had stolen my ability to walk without shaking. She picked up the silver ladle. She served Robert first, giving him a small, polite portion. Then she turned to me. She ladled scoop after scoop into my bowl, filling it to the brim, the creamy liquid sloshing dangerously close to the edge. She placed the fullest bowl in front of me. "Eat up, Elias," she said, sitting down across from me and unfolding her napkin. "It will make you feel better. It's warm." I looked at the soup. I looked at the flecks of parsley floating on the surface, innocent camouflage for the chemical weapon dissolved within. I looked at the woman who had promised to take care of me when I moved in. "I'm not very hungry, Carla," I said. My voice was stronger than it had been in weeks. They didn't know why. They didn't know that for the last 3 days, ever since I found the receipt, I had been pouring her special nutrient smoothies into the potted fern by the bay window. The fern was now brown and withered, dead as a doornail. I was still alive. "Just a few bites," Robert urged, his voice cracking. He picked up his own spoon but didn't eat. He stared at me, his face pale. "Carla worked all day on it. Dad, please." "You need your strength," Carla added, her voice dropping an octave, becoming harder. "You look so pale, Elias. You need the nutrition." Dr. Evans," I repeated. "Yes." I picked up my spoon. I saw Carla's shoulders relax. I saw Robert exhale a breath he had been holding.
They were watching me like spectators at a horse race, waiting for their horse to cross the finish line, or in this case, for my heart to stop beating. I lowered the spoon. "Actually," I said, placing the silver utensil back on the table with a sharp clink, "I invited a guest. I thought we could share." Carla froze. Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "A guest? What are you talking about?" "It was a last-minute decision," I said. "I felt—" The doorbell rang. It was a sharp, intrusive sound that shattered the thick tension in the room like a hammer hitting glass. Robert jumped in his seat, his knee hitting the table and rattling the silverware. He stammered. Carla's eyes darted to the hallway. "I'll get it," she said, starting to rise. "I'll tell them we're eating." "Sit down, Carla," I said. I didn't shout. I didn't have to. The authority in my tone, an authority I hadn't used since I ran my own construction crew 20 years ago, pinned her to the chair. "I'll get it," I said. I stood up. I pushed my chair back. I reached for my cane, which was leaning against the table, and then I left it there. I didn't need it. I stood on my own 2 feet, feeling the ground solid beneath me. I felt the adrenaline pumping through my veins, burning away the residual weakness of the poison. I walked to the hallway. I heard them whispering behind me. "He's walking," Robert whispered, sounding terrified. "Carla, he's walking fine." "Shut up," she hissed. I opened the front door. Dr. Sam Halloway stood on the porch, holding a black leather medical bag. He looked grim, his jaw set in a line of determination. Behind him stood a tall, broad-shouldered man in a gray suit, Detective Miller. I had met Miller years ago when my shed was burglarized. He looked older now, harder. "Elias," Sam nodded. "Right on time for the main course," I said. I led them back into the dining room. When we entered, Robert jumped up so fast he knocked his chair over. It crashed onto the hardwood floor with a deafening bang. "What?" Robert shouted, backing away toward the sideboard. "Dad, what is going on?" "Sit down, Robert," I commanded. It was the voice I used when he was a child and had broken a neighbor's window. It worked. The habit of obedience was too strong. He righted his chair and sank back into it, trembling. "This is Dr. Halloway," I said, gesturing to Sam, who moved to stand behind my chair. "You remember Sam, and this is Detective Miller."
"This is a private dinner," Carla hissed. Her face had turned a sickly shade of white, her red lipstick now looking like a slash of blood on a corpse. "You have no right to barge in here. You need to leave. My father-in-law is ill." "We're here for the soup, Carla," I said, ignoring her protest. I sat back down. I picked up the bowl she had served me, the bowl filled to the brim with creamy, garlic-scented death. I held it out to her. "You said it was Grandma's recipe," I said calmly. "You said it was full of love." My hand was steady. I didn't spill a drop. "Take a bite," I said. Carla stared at the bowl as if it were a coiled snake, her hands clenched into fists at her sides, her knuckles white. I already ate," she stammered. "I tasted it while I was cooking." "Eat it," I said. "One spoonful. If it's safe for me, it's safe for you. Prove to me that you love me, Carla." "No," she whispered. "Is there something in it?" I asked. I lowered the bowl back to the table. "Is there something in it? Perhaps—" I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the crumpled thermal receipt I had rescued from the trash. I smoothed it out and slammed it onto the table next to the flickering candles. "Rat be gone," I read aloud, my voice ringing in the silence. "High-potency anticoagulant. Purchase date, Tuesday, November 12th. Time, 10:14 a.m. Robert looked at the receipt. He squinted, reading the text. Then he looked at his wife, his mouth opened, his face crumbling. You said he was just sick. You said it was natural deterioration." Carla screamed. She abandoned the act. The mask fell away completely, revealing the monster underneath. She stood up, knocking the table, making the wine glasses jump. "He's dying anyway. We needed the money, Robert. You lost the house. You gambled away the savings. We were going to be on the street in January." "For a payout?" I asked. I looked at my son. I saw the weakness in him, the cowardice that had allowed this to happen. "For a payout?" Robert sobbed. He put his hands in his hands, his shoulders heaving. "I didn't know it was poison. She said it was medicine, herbal medicine to help you sleep, to help you pass peacefully." "Ignorance is not a defense for murder, son," Detective Miller said, stepping forward from the shadows. His voice was deep, authoritative. Carla laughed, a high, hysterical sound. "He's not dead. Look at him. He's fine." Mr.
Vance provided us with a sample of the broth from yesterday, Miller said, pulling a folded paper from his jacket pocket. We ran a rush toxicology screen. Sam opened his bag and pulled out the matching report. "High levels of arsenic and strychnine," Sam said, looking at Carla with disgust. "Enough to kill a horse, let alone a man of 79. You've been microdosing him for months to mimic organ failure." Carla looked at the walls, looking for an escape. There was none. She looked at Robert, but he was useless to her now, a broken man weeping into his hands. She shrieked at me, her face twisting into a mask of pure hate. "I wiped your chin. I cleaned your sheets. I gave up my life to take care of you. You owe us." "I owe you nothing," I said. I stood up again. I felt tall. I felt stronger than I had in years. "I gave you a home," I said quietly. "I gave you safety. I gave you love." Detective Miller nodded to the hallway. 2 uniformed officers entered the room. They moved efficiently.
One pulled Carla's arms behind her back. She screamed. It was an ugly animal sound. "Get off me! Robert, do something! Tell them!" Robert didn't move. He just wept. They cuffed her. They dragged her out of the room, her heels scraping against the hardwood floor, her curses echoing down the hallway. Miller walked over to Robert. "Stand up, mister." "Dad," Robert choked out, looking up at me with tear-filled eyes. "Dad, please." "You stopped being my son when you watched me die and did nothing," I said. Miller hauled him up. They cuffed him. Robert didn't fight. He looked small. He looked like the boy who used to hide behind my leg when it thundered, but I couldn't protect him from this storm. He had created it. They let him out. The front door closed. The room fell silent. The candles still flickered in the center of the table. The soup sat cooling in the china bowls, a lethal weapon disguised as comfort food. The smell of garlic hung heavy in the air. Sam put a heavy hand on my shoulder. "It's over. Elias, safe," I repeated. The word felt hollow. I looked around the empty dining room. My family was gone. The house was quiet. The chairs were empty. I walked to the window. I pulled back the curtain and watched the police cars drive away, their lights flashing red and blue against the dark night sky, illuminating the dead fern on the porch. I felt a profound, aching loneliness, a hole in my chest where my family used to be.
But underneath it, I felt the solid ground of dignity. I was alive. I hadn't let them take that from me. I turned back to the table. I leaned over and blew out the candles, one by one. Puff, puff, puff. Smoke curled up into the darkness. "I'll need a new will, Sam," I said softly. "We can handle that tomorrow," Sam said gently. "Let's get out of here. Let's go to the diner. Let's get you a real meal." "Yes," I said. "I think I'd like that. Grilled cheese." I walked to the door, then stopped. I turned back one last time. I left the receipt on the table, right next to Robert's empty wine glass. It was the only inheritance they would ever get.